So look, I'm very, very pleased to be here. 2012, I had the opportunity to be right here at the State Library to give a set of workshops, and I'm very grateful to everyone that helped make that happen. Kirsty Thorpe, who was at the time at CETA, is also must be acknowledged for her tremendous work, so thank you. We started something called the Center for Digital Archaeology in 2011 because digital preservation cannot be an oxymoron. It has to be a real thing for all future generations, for everyone. So one of my missions for being here today is simply to galvanize all of us to figure out how we can all help make that happen. So, Mukurtu 2.0 is here, and Michael did a fabulous job of explaining things. This is awesome because we don't have a whole lot of time. We've been enjoying all sorts of pleasant technologies like little planes that make lots of noise. We're doing these 4 workshops, and then it's workshops in Taranaki in New Zealand afterwards. But just to give you a quick tour of what's been happening, we began in Debo, where the elder folks gave me this beautiful tie of honey ants, which is fantastic. Here's Kelly giving a workshop. We had a small but very feisty and excited group of folks there. At the first workshop, these workshops are 8 hours long. They're pretty intense, so at least my voice would pass out. I apologize in advance. Then we came and we moved on to Armadale, where we were just yesterday. We have about 15 folks from around. And Steve can explain just what great distances people came to participate. It was an exciting workshop indeed. And it was actually held in a school, which is pretty cool. So where it all began, as was mentioned, was in Central Australia, Tennant Creek, and Warramungu land, and with Kim's work. And they already had an analog system for cultural protocols that worked perfectly fine. Okay? So men's restricted knowledge is put in here, permission applies, and it pretty much stayed that way. But as we probably know, or maybe don't all know, that the notion of protocols aren't what happens digitally, this notion of open and closed and private and public. They're a continuum of concepts. Death, ritual status, where you're from, who you're from, who you are. All these are a continuum of concepts, and they change like that. They change all the time. So building a digital system that can accommodate these same concepts is a tricky business. Mukurtu, safekeeping place, was given by the Warramungu community to all of us as a real kind of concept, as a really great metaphor. And an actual Mukurtu CMS was built back in 2007, thanks to Kim's great funding effort. She's a real amazing person in that respect. And it worked just in Tennant Creek. So what you would do is you would go, it was a face-to-face thing, and you'd meet up and you'd be given a login that would allow you to have access, whether you're man, woman, elder, and what family you might have been from. And from that, you got a page of family items and exactly precisely the things that you need to have access to. This is 2007. This is the little stone age of digital technology here. And it worked really, really well. But then Kim got a job and started doing presentations like this, and everyone in the world over time has wanted to have Mukurtu sites. So in 2010, we actually met up, and she gave me the challenge of figuring out how to bring this to the world. And I didn't really know how to do that. So we were very fortunate to get some really fantastic funding and support from institutional funders around the world. Then we went and started reaching out to fantastic developers around the world. But what really matters most are all of the amazing organizations and Aboriginal and groups that we've met, indigenous folks from around the world. They're all on the ride together. We've had hundreds and hundreds of conversations. Mukurtu 2.0, which we consider to be an archival level platform now, this is on the road to becoming that, was just launched in April of this year. So we're really on a brand new journey. This is where as soon as we got that going, we wanted to come back, and so we're so grateful for your invitation to be here. Now, one of the challenges of building a safekeeping place is strangely things like end-user level agreements that are 37 pages long. So legally, thanks to Jane Anderson, who's a fantastic lawyer, that is our end-user level agreement. It's yours. The site is yours. You don't even have to have a system. It's fun talking to system administrators about how Mukurtu actually works, because unless you're part of the protocol for access, we cannot see your content. even if we're helping to make this site work. So imagine how cool that could really be. And it's kind of really true. And so it's an exciting proposition, but it's still a great challenge to build. Also, content management systems, they're run by folks like here at the State Library. We have trained professionals doing it day in and day out. That's great. How can you bring that to the masses? So if you're out in a land that has no internet access and very little training, how can we make that possible? So the idea through user experience testing was to make Mukurtu as easy as possible, step by step, with embedded videos that are very well done. You can hear Kelly's voice over and over again. I have to acknowledge her for her phenomenal efforts on this. And it's a very extensible platform. So this is the administrative dashboard, configuring the communities here. The communities in Mukurtu are the who, and they can be anything, anyone. They can be a single person. They can be 17 different tribal groups that are trying to have a conversation. They can be researchers. It's really anything that you can possibly imagine. But the core, heart, and soul of Mukurtu are cultural protocols. This is the how of Mukurtu. So you can have a protocol of gender or even seasons. The seasons are interesting. We're in a historic drought in California. So when is the first snowfall? We hope that it will fall at all. There was no snowpack in California last year. So the concepts of protocols are completely defined by communities. And it's an incredible experience. As Michael was saying, it can be easy to build the software platform, but just defining the protocols themselves can be literally years of two lots of knots. So you all know how hard this work is. So let's just take a look at how Mukurtu works. This is a portrait of a gentleman, and different communities can have their own records, and there can be as many of these records as they want. So what happens often with collections, as happened just yesterday, is that the catalog record is provided by a cultural memory institution such as this. The information may not necessarily be correct, and oftentimes it's just lacking in all sorts of things. Just yesterday we had, a breastplate that's actually held in the National Museum of Australia, and a 15-minute sharing conversation about what that plate meant to her great-grandfather. Okay, that whole knowledge set is only shared in that room and by her friends and family. It's that kind of knowledge that the communities want to be able to share internally at first, and then share with the world to help correct the collections. It's really, truly a sharing in both directions. So here's another record, and now we can see what's happened is that the first record has become related to this new one, and now we have audio here at the top.
So I had a picture with mother and my dad that I had to take to Spokane City. It was called Spokane City. And that was taken in 1906 before they went to a delegation. And my dad says when a delegation to Washington, when they got over there, all those things about was CTC and vehicle, and they took off, and we didn't know.
So it's fantastic because you can combine audio and video and all this. Now, again, just yesterday in workshop, the notion of an oral tradition being the only piece of media that's associated with something is really, really powerful and compelling. Oftentimes, the transcription of the translation can be points of contention if the translation is in a language that the original speaker doesn't actually understand. Again, cultural protocols may be applied to these items, so they're very atomic. But we also have preservation level metadata, licensing, and traditional licenses, etc., that are also associated with the records. Now, Clive Freeman is a gentleman who, our Aboriginal folk that was here in our workshop in 2012, and he said, hey, it would be really cool if there was a way that we could share stories, collect these stories from these kids. He's like in his 30s. I think that's hilarious. He says kids. But basically, so we came up with this notion of Mukurtu Mobile. We got it funded, and it's now available. It has an iPhone and iPad, and allows exactly the cultural protocols and communities that you have available to you right on your phone. It records audio, video, and images. So very quickly here, this is what Mukurtu Mobile looks like. It's totally free. You can collect places with very precise information. You do not have to have internet to record the geolocations, which is totally cool. The exact and precise protocols and communities can add cultural narratives. If you have data, you can even speak it into the phone. So it's a very cool platform. And just kind of race along here. GPS-enabled location capture. Kelly set it up for the workshop we had yesterday, so exactly the workshop protocols that we all had and we're sharing were available to all of the participants of the workshop. So let's take a quick tour of things that you can do with Mukurtu. Let's take a look at some real projects. Well, here's one. Okay. You go to Mukurtu's site on mukurtu.net, which we're going to talk about in a minute, for the traveling places storytelling, so that as we go to each workshop, we can actually have a place to play. Right? Here's the administrative dashboard that you saw before, and I've made sure to cut the slides so we can actually see the content, because the idea is that this content was shared specifically and only with the communities that were there. And it was fun toggling this back and forth, but this is the breastplate. You can Google this item and see it on the web, so I feel very confident about showing it to you right now. Now, we talked about who, we talked about how. Let's talk about really why we do this. Okay, why is what we're doing so important? Let's start with our friends in the Klamath River in California. This is Karuk country. They used to have about 1 million acres. Their acreage has shrunk, but they're one of the largest, most important tribal nations in California. And this is Lisa Hillman, and what we built is something called the Sipnook Digital Library. They no longer need us to run it. They're doing it all by themselves. It's absolutely fantastic. But they have some huge challenges. 80% of the communities under the California median's income level, they have virtually no internet access at all, and most of the youth, leave. So the idea of being able to share with the overall Karuk nation, which is worldwide, is a major precedent and need. So we, provide some training, which has been really great. We've been up there now a couple of times, and we continue to do that. And the Sipnook Library, they meet every week and talk about these items together. It's really an amazing thing. We're going to move up to northwest Alaska, where sea levels are rising and permafrost is melting. We don't have to believe in climate change, but these people need a new place to live, okay? So unfortunately, the diaspora is real for the Kivalina folks. They even needed to, put in their bingo proceeds so that they could pay for the fuel to heat their community center. So it's a very real situation, and they want to be able to preserve their future digitally. So that is a core mission and need. We wrote an NEH grant with them. It was not funded, and they've had to move. So these situations are real. The funding is necessary and essential. Now we're going to move to Syria. As we all know, the situation in Syria is dire. Civil war has led to thousands of lives, and hundreds of thousands of people are moving all over the world now. This is the Great Mosque of Aleppo in 2009, and this is what it looks like now. These are 7 of the most important World Heritage Sites in Syria, and they are all gone. Now, ISIS is using heritage sites as a way of producing new commerce and also making a worldwide message, which is pretty horrible. So a war-torn country, one idea that was like, well, maybe we can, some folks came to us and said, hey, can we do some project together where we could have folks on the ground documenting heritage, but they wanted to target women to do this. So it's a pretty bad move. It's a challenge to make this stuff happen. How are we going to document heritage in a war-torn country and also keep people from dying? So sometimes you just have to let the buildings fall. Now, let's come home, your home, to a Seven Sisters story. The National Museum of Australia is doing a new exhibition that's going to open in 2017. We were fortunate enough to work on what's called the Mira Canning Stock Route Project a few years past, and bring about 40,000 items into archival quality to produce what's now our most successful Mukurtu project ever. This was a 1.5 version as opposed to 2.0. It's art center driven. You can take a look at images, which is what they principally had, and relate it to oral histories and historic documents, the actual painting, the event of the painting, and every single person who actually made the painting is honored by that process, including this lovely woman here. And you can see everything that she's attributed to, every single painting that she's been part of. Here's the painting of the canning stock route itself, created by 14 women with an intention of actually selling this art and actually making a bit of point back, which is really totally cool. Here are all the creators. So now the photographer gets credit for taking the photo, but really as a contributor. That's pretty cool. That's a really cool thing. Lots and lots and lots of data. And so now all this data is sitting here in one repository, but the National Museum of Australia doesn't have it, but they have copyright for most of these photos. So that's why we're going to go to Canberra in a couple days to share it back. Here you are not logged in, and once you've logged in, additional protocols and additional content is suddenly available to you. This is a project we're working with the Musqueam Band and First Nation Band on a public art project. And here we have cultural mapping and naming of different places. I've removed the names because they're sharing the place names within band, because there are 14 different Salish dialects just within Vancouver, and they need to have some conversations for about the next probably 20 years to get that all sorted. But you can just click and go right to an item, so it's a really cool mapping thing. Kelly got to go face-to-face to a Ludic archaeological museum in Alaska, and she actually helped produce this design. But this points out that Mukurtu can be stunningly beautiful, and we can honor color palettes. The Ludic Museum has a very specific design guide, and we were able to implement that design to build their site. This is the Sustainable Heritage Network, an Institution of Museum Library Services funded project to produce a sharing place for all of America, all the way up into Canada and beyond into the Arctic, so that different levels of expertise can all be shared between communities. Protocols are very important. If you have knowledge about a particular canoe, you may want to share with other folks that we may not necessarily have access to. Rounding these out, youth. We have a project we worked on with the Paschal Sherman Indian School, citizen science, learning real-world science, but embedding in that science language revitalization. The core tenets of Mukurtu is the notion that languages are being lost literally daily, and it'd be really great to make that not happen. The best computer in the world is a 7-year-old, okay? It's not the technology, it's the kids. You gotta get these knowledge into the kids to get them excited to do this. So we built an iPad app, and they had a great time. They started making movies. They broke the software like that. And did all sorts of cool stuff and made their own movies and really were telling stories. And Steve has been part of doing these great workshops, teaching people how to use iMovie on the iPads. It's absolutely fantastic. I don't think Kelly's even had a chance to see it live, but the California Indian Conference is coming back to Berkeley 30 years later. Conferences happen, all sorts of knowledge is transferred in these live events. And this is literally today, well, it's still tomorrow, or was it yesterday in Berkeley, I always forget. And so that's happening as well. Rounding it out, traditional knowledge and copyright. We've been very fortunate to work on something called local contexts. This will be new stuff for Steve, see? He gets to learn some new stuff. The local context project is about traditional knowledge labels. It began as licenses, but it gets into whole IP issues. But the local context project is pretty amazing. It's the idea, here we're seeing the Scowlitz Nation in Canada, who have come up with a statement about how they would like to see content of their own site used by the world and in appropriate and meaningful ways to them. So there are 13 different labels: seasonal, verified, community use only, men's and women's restricted general. Much of the content due to things like public domain and the internet and Facebook is out in the world. The idea is that labels can be associated to that content. And the Library of Congress is going to do something pretty cool. They're actually going to put TK labels on their catalog records in the internet. That's going to happen. That's going to be a transformative thing. Now, not all of these labels will make sense for a particular community. So we've built a tool, and you're seeing it here, where they can choose a label, and then they can have a conversation about that label and see exactly from the core text that was provided by the project how they would like that label to be presented. And it's also available to them in audio and video, because digital as well as other forms of language literacy is a challenge in many communities. And the final result using code is a beautiful and perfectly formatted output that they can just stick on their website. So this is huge and very cool, and we're really excited to be participating and make this happen. So I'm rounding this out, kids. Mukurtu.net is something we've been working on, because with Mukurtu.net we can produce a very secure platform and spin up sites for communities so that every single person in this room, if you wanted to, could have a Mukurtu site. It's very fortunate to have something like a state library, but many communities have nothing like that. So we're trying to make it as extraordinarily affordable as possible. I got into this business 12 years ago because I'm an archaeologist, and I wanted to make sure that this content that I was held for a site that no longer exists would be safe. Digital backups are easy. Preservation is extraordinarily hard. Now, we had a fortunate opportunity to see a tour today of what's happening right here at the State Library. I wish everyone had that, but they don't. So we have to make this happen. And so our Center for Digital Archaeology is just trying to make a stand to bring this to the masses. Now, not everybody wants to be a technologist. Not everybody wants to be a geek and learn what that means. The cloud is awesome. We love it. We use it every time. But Facebook went down, and the world had to meet their own kids and wife. Hey, that's a stranger I didn't know about. Netflix went down. My poor kid couldn't watch, Elmo. It's real. Another problem. Almost all of these shared services are by subscription. I don't believe anybody should have to subscribe to their own memories. I was working on a project in Israel, and because of credit card fraud, the day that Dropbox decided to charge me, I couldn't have access to Dropbox, so I couldn't get work done for a couple of days. It was pretty sucky. Privacy has been kind of not a thing in the internet. We can't produce safekeeping places with communities unless we can demonstrate trust and make privacy real. Okay? It's not going to happen overnight. And I don't put pictures of my kid on Facebook, and we were very careful even yesterday in a room that was a classroom with pictures of 8-year-olds on the wall. If you look at it, this is such an incredible challenge on every level. And again, at the end of the day, we want it to be yours. So Mukurtu.net is a way of doing that. So the notion that it's not a subscription, but you just buy the site and it's yours forever. How long is forever? We don't know, but it better be longer than the next 5 years. So that is an intent, and what we're here to do today, and why I get this one moment to say this to all of you, we really want to bring Mukurtu.net to Australia where it started. And I'm loving the conversations we're having. And it's going to take all of us to get this job done. So thank you. Thank you.